In 1902, construction workers in the town of Paola found a temple beneath the surface. Not a basement, not a catacomb. It was carved entirely from solid limestone, descending 3 levels into the earth, reaching a depth of 10.6 meters below the surface. The construction workers tried to hide it. The developer wanted to continue building houses. But the void was too large, and eventually authorities were informed. Inside that underground temple were approximately 7,000 human skeletons. The man given the job of excavating them destroyed most of the evidence before anyone could study it. His name was Father Manuel Magri. He was a Jesuit priest and ethnographer who began formal excavation in 1903. Over the next 4 years, Magri emptied chamber after chamber of skeletal remains, grave goods, pottery, and artifacts. He did not catalog them. He did not record their positions. He did not document which bones came from which chambers or how they were arranged. He removed material from a 5,000-year-old site with the methodology of someone clearing a storage room. Bones were discarded, artifacts were lost. The spatial relationships that would have told us how these people were buried, what rituals accompanied their death, what the arrangement of 7,000 bodies across dozens of chambers actually meant, all of that was destroyed. It was not destroyed by time or by war. It was destroyed by a priest with a shovel who did not understand what he was looking at. In 1907, Magri died unexpectedly in Tunisia while on missionary work. His excavation report and field notes were lost with him. They have never been recovered. The man who took over, Themistocles Zamet, was a proper archaeologist. He excavated systematically from 1907 to 1911. He published detailed reports. He documented what remained. But by the time Zamet arrived, the damage was done. The contextual information that makes archaeology meaningful, the where and the how and the in relation to what, had been stripped from the site. What Zamet could confirm was this: the underground temple, now known as the Hal Saflieni Hypogeum, was approximately 5,500 years old. It had been carved from living rock using stone tools and antler picks. It contained roughly 7,000 disarticulated skeletons, meaning the bones had been separated, defleshed, and deposited in piles rather than buried as intact bodies. Some bore traces of red ochre, suggesting ritual treatment. The structure itself is unlike anything else in archaeology. The hypogeum has 3 levels. The upper level is the oldest, with burial chambers cut on either side of a central passage. The middle level is the most elaborate. Its chambers are carved to look exactly like the above-ground megalithic temples that exist elsewhere on Malta. Trilithon doorways, false windows, carved lintels, smooth finished walls create the impression of built masonry, even though every surface was carved from a single mass of stone. The builders deliberately replicated the architecture of their surface temples in a space that no sunlight would ever reach. They carved an imitation of the sky-bound world into the earth. The lower level descends to a depth of 10.6 meters. When it was excavated, it contained no bones and no offerings. Its purpose remains unknown. The Holy of Holies is oriented toward the winter solstice. Nested trilithons create a telescoping effect that draws the eye inward toward a focal point that would have been illuminated by sunlight once a year. The walls of one chamber are covered in the only surviving prehistoric paintings in all of Malta: red ochre spirals, honeycomb patterns, a human hand. These paintings exist nowhere else on the island. Every other Neolithic site on Malta has carved decoration. Only the hypogeum has paint. And then there is the oracle room. I want to slow down here because this is the part of the story I keep coming back to. The oracle room is a small chamber on the middle level with a carved niche cut into one wall. When a voice speaks into that niche at a specific frequency, the sound does not simply echo, it resonates. The entire chamber vibrates. The effect can be felt physically in the chest and in the bones. The resonant frequency has been measured at approximately 110 hertz. This is not an approximation pulled from speculation. It has been formally measured by researchers including Paolo De Bertolis of the University of Trieste and Niccolo Visconti of the University of Siena as part of a systematic archaeoacoustic study. They used electroencephalogram monitoring on volunteers exposed to the chamber's resonance and documented measurable changes in brain activity. A separate study, conducted by Dr. Ian Cook at the UCLA Neuropsychiatric Institute, found something that I have spent a long time thinking about. When healthy volunteers were exposed to sound at 110 Hz, activity in the prefrontal cortex shifted from left hemisphere dominance to right hemisphere dominance. The left temporal region, which governs language processing, showed significantly reduced activity. At 110 Hz, the brain's language centers quiet down and its emotional and intuitive processing centers become more active. The logical mind steps back. Something else steps forward. The builders of the hypogeum carved a chamber 5,000 years ago that produces a frequency which measurably alters human consciousness. The precision of the niche, the specific dimensions of the chamber, and the consistency of the effect suggest to me that this was not an accident. These people knew what this room did. They designed it to do it, and they placed it at the center of a temple that held 7,000 dead. Among those 7,000 skeletons, a number displayed elongated cranial structures, dolichocephalic skulls, naturally elongated, not artificially deformed. Forensic examination confirmed these were people born with longer, narrower skulls than the general population. Dr. Anton Mifsud and Dr. Charles Savona Ventura documented them in detail, noting abnormal cranial elongation and distinctive occipital bone formations. The skulls were housed at the National Museum of Archaeology in Valletta. After 1985, they were removed from public display. Heritage Malta says they were moved to restricted storage for conservation. They were not destroyed. They were not stolen. When unusual remains from one of the most significant archaeological sites in Europe disappear from view without transparent explanation, speculation fills the vacuum. That is not the fault of the people asking questions. That is the fault of institutions that do not answer them. The hypogeum does not exist in isolation. It exists within a civilization that has no adequate explanation. The Maltese megalithic temple builders emerged around 3600 BC and vanished around 2500 BC. In those 1100 years, they constructed some of the oldest freestanding structures on Earth. Older than the Egyptian pyramids, older than Stonehenge. They built Gintia, Hagar-Chim, Menajdra, and the Tarxian complex, all with stone tools, no metal, no wheels, no written language. And then, around 2500 BC, they were gone. Skeletal analysis from the final centuries shows that approximately half of all deaths were children. That is not normal mortality, that is catastrophic stress. Tree ring data indicates a severe climate event around 2350 BC that would have devastated agriculture across the Mediterranean. Genetic evidence shows population influx in the final period, arrivals from the Eurasian steppes and sub-Saharan Africa, bringing competition and possibly new diseases. After 2500 BC, the record goes silent. No transitional period, no successor culture. When Bronze Age settlers arrived 1,000 years later, the temple builders were gone. The hypogeum was sealed by sediment and forgotten for 4,000 years. Today, the hypogeum is managed by Heritage Malta. Only 80 visitors per day are allowed inside in groups of 10. Tickets must be booked online, and they sell out months in advance. The official justification is microclimate preservation. Human respiration raises carbon dioxide, and body heat destabilizes the temperature. These are legitimate concerns, but the restriction has the practical effect of severely limiting research access. The site was closed entirely from 1992 to 2000 for restoration that lasted 8 years. When it reopened, the 80 per day cap was imposed. The lower level, the one that contained no bones and no offerings, the one whose purpose has never been determined, remains largely inaccessible to both visitors and researchers. No ground-penetrating radar survey had been published. No systematic genetic study of the 7,000 skeletons has been conducted at scale, despite the fact that DNA analysis could answer where these people came from. No LiDAR scanning of the lower levels has been completed. The Oracle Room's acoustic properties have been measured, but the question of whether the builders intentionally engineered a frequency that alters brain function remains formally unanswered. We have the tools, we have the site, we have the question, we do not have the institutional will to pursue it. Somewhere beneath Paola, 10.6 meters below the surface, there is a chamber that resonates at a frequency which quiets the language centers of the human brain. It was carved 5,000 years ago by a civilization that left no written record and vanished without explanation. It held 7,000 of their dead. The lowest level has never been explored. The acoustic properties have never been explained. The genetic origins of the people buried there have never been studied. And still, only 80 people a day are allowed to stand in the space where 7,000 were laid to rest. The oracle room is silent now, but I do not think it has finished speaking.